Some stories are written in ink, others in stone. This story, this one, is written in bread. It's the story of the quietest apocalypse that was ever averted, and the one man who stood in its way. It sounds like nothing. A deep, profound silence that consumes everything else. And that silence, not so long ago, was our certain future. Look at this number. It's not a statistic, it's a census of ghosts. 2 billion people who were never supposed to be born, who are alive today because of a debt owed to one man. This is the story of how that debt was earned. The year is 1966, and the whole world is holding its breath. The math is brutal, it's simple, and it is undeniable. The Great Famine is coming. It's not a question of if, it's only a question of when. You can feel the clock ticking down. Governments are watching the projections, and they see a tidal wave of hunger about to break over all of us. India, a nation of 500 million souls, is literally shipping away its national treasure just to buy one more month of food. And in the quiet halls of power, leaders are starting to ask a question that should never, ever be asked. Which nations do we sacrifice? Who do we let starve so that the rest of us might live? And then the verdict comes down. It's not a warning anymore. It's a eulogy for a world that's about to die. A death sentence accepted by everyone as an unavoidable fact. But while the world's capitals are drawing up spreadsheets for mass death, the real war, the only one that actually matters, isn't being fought in a boardroom. It's being fought in the dirt, under a forgotten sun. He's a tall, quiet man from an Iowa farm. He has the slow, calloused hands of a farmer and the relentless eyes of a prophet. And for 20 years, while the world is looking the other way, he is fighting a monster. A single spore that can ride the wind, a tiny plague that can turn an entire continent of golden wheat into a field of black, useless dust in a single season. This is his battlefield. This is his war. You see, he isn't trying to change the world. He's just trying to solve a problem right in front of him. But to solve this one problem, he has to bend the very laws of nature to his will. Now, this wasn't just science. It was a war of attrition, fought one single seed at a time. First, he has to teach the wheat to stand up straight, to grow short and strong so it won't collapse under the weight of its own life-giving grain. Then, he has to weave into its very DNA a shield against that black rust. And finally, his greatest miracle, he teaches the wheat to defy the seasons, to give 2 harvests in a year where there was only ever one. On one side, you have the wheat of the last 10,000 years. Tall, elegant, but fragile. On the other side, his creation. Short, defiant, and heavy with grain. He hadn't just improved a plant. He had forged an entirely new kind of life. A seed that could carry the weight of the world. And then, after 20 years of silence and dust, the world begins to change. Not with a thunderclap, but with the quiet rustle of a few small sacks of seed. It all starts right here. A handful of seeds, carried across borders like they're contraband. They get planted in the parched earth of nations that are preparing for mass graves. Nobody knows it yet, but these few pounds of genetic code, they're the beginning of the end of the famine. And then, this happens. That is not an increase, that is an explosion. A biological detonation. The harvest doesn't just grow, it multiplies. It becomes a flood of golden grain that just washes over the land. And just like that, the prophecy of doom is broken. The death sentence is overturned. A nation that was measuring its survival in mere months becomes its own savior. The silence of 1 billion empty stomachs is filled. The Great Famine never comes. But what about the man? What about the man who lit the fuse? The man whose hands held the very seeds that saved a world? He hates offices. He despises suits. He wins the Nobel Peace Prize and immediately starts to worry that it's just going to get in the way of his real work. So while the world that he saved celebrates, he is on his knees in another dusty field, in another forgotten corner of the world, fighting another plague. Why? Because people are hungry there. Because for him, the only prize that ever mattered was the feeling of good dirt under his nails. And so we come back to this number, 2 billion. It is not a statistic. It is a census of the living who owe this man their breath. Their lives are owed not to a conqueror, not to an emperor, but to a quiet plant scientist from Iowa named Norman Borlaug, a man whose name almost none of them will ever know. When they asked him near the end of his life why he did it, why he never wanted the fame or the fortune, this was his answer. So simple, so humble, and in its own quiet way, maybe the most epic statement ever made. It was enough, 2 billion times over.